Welcome, NutritionRadio.org listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry, University Nutrition Professor of over 20 years and podcast host of long-running shows like Iron Radio. Come on in. Weight management tips. Hey, everybody. Have you ever heard about drinking cold water to lose weight? This is something that comes up repeatedly and something I actually just discussed with my wife not long ago. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What to drink to lose weight. Now, obviously, people differ, but I just want you to get the idea about some of the theories and physiology behind these different beverages and whether or not they work. Let's start with just good old water, cold water. One of the concepts, and it's got some research behind it both ways, like kind of back and forth equivocal research, that it's a thermodynamic thing, that as homeotherms, people keep a constant temperature, 37 degrees C, right, 98.6 Fahrenheit, I believe. And when you drink cold water, not only is it filling you, but it's creating this sort of cold gradient where your body has to work to bring that up to your body temperature, and you waste some energy, you waste some calories in the process. In my opinion, one of the best studies or best applications using cold water would be to drink a nice 16-ounce water before your three major meals. If you have 3 meals a day, like a breakfast, lunch, dinner, within, let's say, an hour before, consume some water, sure, cold water, let's say, and just kind of use that as a way to distend the stomach just a little bit, get that slight sense of fullness. Whether or not the thermogenic thing is a huge part of this, I honestly think it might be more of a, just filling the stomach sort of thing. I know it's not all going to be there when it comes to mealtime, 30 to 60 minutes later. But it is one strategy. Again, the research really goes back and forth on that kind of thing, depending on the protocol of the study. So what else can you do? Well, instead of just water, there are some healthy, quote-unquote, beverages that you can consume that might actually assist with the fat burning process or help you improve body composition either on the muscle mass and lean tissue preservation side or on the fat loss side. One of these would be tea. Hot tea, brewed tea, black or green. Teas are rich in polyphenols. I'm thinking of EGCG, for example, in green tea. I've actually done some research with that myself and seen how some people, it seemed to be genetic, but how some people had elevated adrenaline production. It was sort of a combination product, though, to be fair. But there is research just on the EGCG and that it might elevate metabolic rate and that kind of thing. These catechins also have anti-inflammatory types of effects, which sort of spill over in some studies into investigations of anti-inflammatory effects. So interesting stuff. One thing I think I would personally prefer is to focus on that caffeine and EGCG combination. That's going to happen in green tea anyway. Green teas typically are not as high in caffeine as black tea, and black tea's got about half the caffeine of coffee. But again, it seems to be that combination. Caffeine is not always bad. It's very polarizing. Some people love it, some avoid it. But in this case, I think we're talking about a fairly low dose that might augment some of the effects on metabolism and possibly weight loss. This brings us to coffee, either cold brew or iced coffee, which, by the way, are different, right? Cold brew is extracting different things from the coffee grounds in lower temperature environments versus just putting it on ice. But in any case, whether you drink it cold or hot, coffee gets a lot of attention. In fact, I'm submitting an academic paper on the effects of coffee and sports performance and health very soon here. Like tea, we're going to see antioxidant effects from the polyphenols. Again, polyphenols is a very broad category of a lot of these antioxidant-like substances. But one of them, especially rich in coffee, is chlorogenic acid. It's the big player other than caffeine. But we, again, like with the tea, we can't overlook the fact that the caffeine is playing a role, sort of this entourage effect along with these antioxidants, with these polyphenols. One of the things that really struck me was, although the effects are mild, it seemed repeatedly shown in the literature that coffee may have some enhancing effect on body composition. Again, either maybe it's through the actions of insulin over time and blood sugar, better carbohydrate control, if you will. That would be at odds a little bit with acute ingestion because we know caffeine as a stimulant would raise blood sugar, but acute studies don't always match these long-term chronic studies, and those are very interesting. It does look like long-term coffee has anti-diabetic effects, in other words, helping with carbohydrate metabolism. I'm a coffee drinker, and if you want to know like what's heavy, what's not, most research suggests benefits, probably optimal benefits or close to optimal, around 4 cups per day. That's a pretty good dose. I've seen up to 8 cups a day with coffee and tea. And let me qualify, in healthy people, not people that have any medical conditions that are particularly problematic. Looks like healthy and okay in that range. Obviously, individual tolerance is going to play a role. The FDA doesn't like people consuming more than 400 milligrams of caffeine per day. So you do have to keep an eye on the caffeine. I'm not saying, that's a free-for-all. And that, of course, is where the 4 cups comes in. At about 100 milligrams of caffeine per cup of coffee, 4 8-ounce cups should be enough. By the way, when it comes to chlorogenic acid in the coffee, it ranges hugely depending on bean type and brew method and grind size and everything else. Maybe 40 to 400 milligrams of that stuff in a cup. Just like with the water, though, when we have coffee and tea, we don't mean with a bunch of sugary, syrupy nonsense in there. We just mean the beverage itself. It's important, and I've done this when I've worked with clients, to get them to appreciate just the taste of tea, just the taste of coffee. They're good-tasting things if you give them a chance without putting 3 packets of Splenda or aspartame or, God forbid, 50 or 80 grams of sugar. That's not going to help with weight loss, of course, at all. Another class of beverage that you might think about would be vegetable juices. You really need to look at the label, since we were just harping on the sugar thing. Fruit and vegetable mix. Typically, I'll mix the two. I'll take a lower carbohydrate green juice vegetable. Probably wouldn't be a big fan of some of the bitterness, things like kale and green pepper and cucumber or something in there that I don't care for. Mix it 50-50 with a fruit juicer kind of drink, a greens drink. That way you kind of cut the carbs down quite a bit. But I tend to, this is very subjective, but tend to feel better when I consume those, especially if I'm not getting enough fruits and vegetables during the day. Obviously, getting the fiber from whole fruits and vegetables going to be a better option if you can do that instead of just a drink. But today we're talking about drinks. The last category I'd like to touch on is protein drinks. Protein drinks provide, protein, which is the most satiating, the most filling and satisfying, if you will, of the macronutrients. Painting with a broad brush, I've seen studies from maybe 5 grams up to about 30 plus grams of protein at a time when it comes to something like satiety or supporting muscle health, right? Muscle protein synthesis. Obviously, protein drinks are going to bring 4 calories per gram of the protein itself, but I do not subscribe to the concept that a calorie is a calorie in every circumstance. It's a great way to keep track of things. We've talked about this before, but it's the beginning, not the end-all, be-all of weight management. Proteins just tend not to become stored as body fat. They have different fates in the body. I'm not going to bore you with gluconeogenesis and protein synthesis, thermogenesis, and all this kind of thing. But for those people who do say, oh, no, calories regardless of, the source, I would really beg the question, how many people do you know who got really fat on egg whites and skinless, boneless chicken breasts? The answer is going to be 0. It's always going to be 0. That's enough for that discussion for today. The one thing that protein shakes are going to provide, or protein drinks really, is that they help preserve muscle tissue. There is a little bit of indication that coffee research might do that, but for the most part, this is your best bet for preserving muscle tissue. And when you're on a low-calorie diet, your protein needs do go up. And I'll end this little weight management tip day by just saying you can actually combine some of these things, right? There are such things as protein and vegetable combinations, or protein drinks, protein coffees that are sort of functional beverages. Those would be things to think about. Again, keeping an eye on the total calorie content and the sugar content and whatnot. But there are some examples for you. Water, juices, coffee, tea, protein drinks that might be options to try to curb appetite, try to induce a little bit of satiety, preserve lean tissue when you're under-consuming calories on purpose. So I hope that little tip or reminder was helpful. If you like these sorts of things coming at you on a fairly rapid basis, regular basis, you could Check us out. Backup is on YouTube at Lawnman07. Please leave a review on iTunes. You can find us on Spotify and Stitcher and Amazon/Audible, all over the place. Slowly over the months in 2023, you'll see nutritionradio.org becoming part of a bigger picture of other things. But for now, just appreciate you that you're here and you're listening. Really, really love the feedback. Keep that coming if you can. I should really be better about reading some of your comments and reviews. I will do so soon. And thanks again. We'll talk to you later. The nutritionradio.org podcast is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, check with your physician, nutritionist, or qualified exercise physiologist in order to make the progress that you need.